Ancient American conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Let's begin. The Illuminati in early America. Reverend Morse's sermon warned of a secret organization, the Bavarian Illuminati, a group allegedly founded in 1776 with the goal of erasing religion and overthrowing governments worldwide. Pamphlets and sermons claimed that this shadowy order had infiltrated American universities, newspapers, and even the Freemasons themselves. The panic didn't arise from nowhere. Europe had been convulsed by the French Revolution, where monarchs fell and churches burned. To conservative clergy in America, such chaos could only have come from a diabolical source, a global conspiracy to destroy faith and order. Letters between clergymen and early politicians, including President George Washington, mentioned the Illuminati by name. Washington dismissed the claims, but acknowledged that mischievous emissaries were indeed at work. The Jesuit Plot. The Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, was a Catholic order founded in the 16th century, known for their education, discipline, and loyalty to the Pope. They had long been both admired and distrusted in Europe. Rumors painted them as spies and manipulators, masters of intrigue who bent kings and empires to Rome's will. When Catholic immigrants began arriving by the millions, these old European fears found new life in the New World. By the 1830s and 1840s, a full-blown paranoia had taken hold in America. Anti-Catholic writers claimed Jesuit agents were infiltrating schools, the press, and even the government. Pamphlets such as The Awful Disclosures of Maria Monk, a sensational and fabricated account of sexual corruption inside a Montreal convent, sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Protestant ministers warned from their pulpits that the Pope planned to take over the United States through secret Catholic control. Violence soon followed. Convents and churches were burnt in cities like Boston and Philadelphia. Political movements like the Know Nothing Party rose in the 1850s, built on a platform of anti-immigrant and anti-Catholic sentiment. They claimed Jesuit priests were guiding. The Rothschild banking conspiracy. The Rothschild dynasty was real, a powerful European banking family that rose to prominence during the 18th and 19th century. Originating in Frankfurt, Germany, Mayer Amschel Rothschild's 5 sons spread across Europe, establishing financial houses in London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. They financed wars, built railroads, and advised monarchs. Their immense influence, secrecy, and Jewish heritage made them easy targets for suspicion and anti-Semitic conspiracy. In America, distrust of centralized banking already ran deep. Andrew Jackson's 1832 campaign to kill the Second Bank of the United States was rooted in the belief that foreign bankers, often rumored to include the Rothschilds, were manipulating America's money supply. Jackson himself declared that the bank was a hydra-heated monster, serving foreign interests. Newspapers and pamphleteers eagerly spread tales that the Rothschild secrecy controlled gold reserves, bought up American debt, and orchestrated financial crisis to keep the nation enslaved to their credit. As economic panics rocked the 19th century, 1837, 1857, 1873, each downturn revived the theory. Populist movements in the late 1800s, such as William Jennings Bryan's supporters, accused international bankers of crushing the working man. By the early 20th century, anti-Semitic groups had fused the Rothschild myth with newer fears about the Federal Reserve, forming the backbone of the global banker conspiracy that still lingers today. The slave power conspiracy. The phrase first emerged in the 1830s when anti-slavery writers like John Quincy Adams and later Charles Sumner and William Lloyd Garrison warned that the South's political influence far outweighed its population. The evidence seemed undeniable. Slave-holding presidents, from Jefferson to Polk, had dominated the White House. The infamous 3/5 Compromise had inflated Southern representation in Congress, and each new state admitted to the Union sparked a bitter contest over whether it would be free or slave. Abolitionists saw a pattern, a strategy that Southern elites were conspiring to expand slavery across the continent, into Texas, the Caribbean, and even Central America. They believed the annexation of Texas, the Mexican-American War, and the 1854 Kansas-Nebraska Act were all orchestrated steps in a secret plan to spread the slave system from sea to shining sea. Too many Northerners, the Dred Scott decision of 1857 confirmed their worst fears. The Supreme Court ruled the black Americans could never be citizens and that Congress had no power to ban slavery in the territories. A decision written, in their view, by men under the thumb of the slave power. Newspapers railed that democracy itself had been captured by an oligarchy of planters. Southerners, for their part, believed the opposite, that they were the victims of an abolitionist conspiracy, a coordinated attack on their way of life. By 1860, the mutual distrust had hardened into hatred. When Abraham Lincoln was elected without carrying a single Southern state, the South saw proof of betrayal. The North saw confirmation of its long-held suspicions. The slave power conspiracy may not have been a literal secret cabal, but it captured a brutal reality that an entrenched minority wielded vast control over a nation founded on liberty. And when that power was finally challenged, the result was not revelation, but war. The Lincoln assassination conspiracies. The night of April 14, 1865 should have been one of celebration. The Civil War was over, Richmond had fallen. Abraham Lincoln, weary but hopeful, attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Before the laughter on stage could finish echoing, a single gunshot shattered the night, and with it, the fragile peace of a wounded nation. John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor and Confederate sympathizer, was quickly identified as the assassin. But even as the government rushed to arrest his co-conspirators, a deeper question took hold. Was Booth acting alone? In the weeks following the assassination, rumors spread like wildfire. Newspapers claimed that Booth was part of a far-reaching Southern plot to resurrect the Confederacy. Others whispered that foreign powers were involved, particularly the Jesuits. Long accused by Protestant America of political intrigue, a sensational 19th century book, 50 Years in the Church of Rome, claimed that Catholic agents had orchestrated Lincoln's death as revenge for the defense of religious liberty. The Vatican, it said, had directed Booth through a secret Jesuit network, a claim historians have since dismissed as fiction, yet one that gained traction among anti-Catholic audiences. Another theory pointed inward, towards Lincoln's own cabinet. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, known for his cold and calculating demeanor, was accused by some of manipulating the investigation to hide his role. Supporters of this view argued that Stanton wanted Lincoln removed before the president could pursue lenient Reconstruction policies towards the South. The fact that Booth escaped capture for nearly 2 weeks, despite Stanton's sweeping authority, fueled suspicions of an inside job. Though the official investigation named only Booth's small band of conspirators, the mystery of Lincoln's assassination refused to die. The suddenness of his death, his almost prophetic aura, and the chaos of post-war policies made the tragedy fertile ground for speculation. The Freemason conspiracy. The Freemasons were real. They were a centuries-old fraternal order, born from medieval guilds and steeped in ritual and symbolism. Many of America's founding fathers, including George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, were members. The organization prized secrecy, moral discipline, and brotherhood, but to outsiders, that secrecy looked sinister. The spark that ignited nationwide suspicion came in 1826. A man named William Morgan, a stonemason from upstate New York, announced he would publish a book exposing Masonic secrets. Before it could be printed, Morgan disappeared. Witnesses last saw him being led away by men linked to local Masonic lodges. His body was never found. The event set off a storm of outrage. Newspapers accused Mason of murder and conspiracy across the nation. Citizens saw proof that the order placed loyalty to the lodge above the law itself. Preachers thundered against it from pulpits. Politicians vowed to fight it in the open. By 1828, the outrage had grown so fierce it gave birth to America's first third party, the Anti-Masonic Party, dedicated to rooting out secret influence in public life. The Lost Tribes and Native American conspiracy. Long before modern archaeology and genetics began unraveling the true history of the Americans, a very different story captured the imagination of early settlers and theologians. It was the 19th century, and many Americans believed that the indigenous people of the North America were not native to the continent at all, but lost descendants to the 10 lost tribes of Israel. The roots of this theory reach back to the Bible. According to the Old Testament, 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel were exiled by the Assyrians in the 8th century BCE and vanished from recorded history. By the 1700s and 1800s, Christian missionaries and amateur scholars in Europe and America began speculating about where those tribes might have gone. As explorers encountered Native American civilizations with their complex rituals, languages, and symbols, some saw uncanny parallels to Hebrew customs. Writers like J. Medea, an 18th century trader who lived among the Chickasaw, claimed to find similarities between native traditions and Old Testament law, purification rituals, flood stories, even notions of a chosen people. To him and others, these were not coincidences, they were proof of ancient Israelite descent. The theory gained momentum in early America for cultural as well as religious reasons. It offered settlers a divine narrative, one that tied the New World to biblical prophecy and allowed them to see the American continent as part of God's plan. But it also carried a darker undertone by reframing indigenous peoples as lost Hebrews. It made them fit into a Judeo-Christian worldview while erasing their own distinct histories and identities. This idea profoundly influenced 19th century American religion. The Book of Mormon, published in 1830, wove the theory into its core narrative, describing ancient Israelites who journeyed to the Americas and became the ancestors of native peoples. The book's story mirrored popular speculation of the time and helped cement the Lost Tribes legend in American spiritual imagination. The giant skeletons and the Smithsonian cover-up. In the late 19th century, as America's heartland was being excavated for farms, railroads, and towns, strange reports began to surface. Newspapers across the Midwest claimed that giant human skeletons, some over 8 feet tall, were being unearthed from ancient burial mounds. The discoveries were often linked to mysterious mound builder civilizations, whose vast earthworks dotted the Mississippi Valley. Farmers and amateur archaeologists described skulls twice normal size and bones so large a man could not lift them. Local museums and private collectors displayed the remains until, according to legend, the Smithsonian Institution stepped in. Rumors spread that the Smithsonian seized the skeletons, labeled them anomalies, and quietly made them disappear. The alleged motive: to protect the accepted narrative of human history and Darwinian evolution. Though official records show no evidence of such finds, the myth endures. It reflects a deep cultural tension between frontier discovery and institutional authority. For many Americans, the idea that ancient giants once ruled the continent offered both wonder and pride. The notion that scientists might hide it fed the growing distrust of elites. Whether a tall tale or a buried truth, the legend of the Smithsonian giants remain one of America's most haunting historical mysteries. The Phantom airships of 1896-1897. In the winter of 1896, something strange began to appear in the skies over California. Witnesses described a massive, cigar-shaped airship, shining lights that glowed against the night, and voices drifting down from above. Within weeks, similar reports emerged across the Midwest. From Sacramento to Chicago, from Texas to the Plains, newspapers called them phantom airships. This was nearly a decade before the Wright brothers' first flight. The idea that anyone possessed a powered, steerable aircraft seemed impossible, and yet hundreds swore they had seen one. Some claimed the ships landed in fields, others said they spoke with mysterious inventors who hinted at secret government technology. A few stories even suggested the airships were of extraterrestrial origin, piloted by beings far ahead of human invention. As sightings spread, so did speculation. Was it a military experiment, a lone genius testing a secret machine, or something far beyond Earth? Skeptics argued that hoaxes and hysteria fueled the craze, a reflection of America's growing obsession with technology and its fear of the unknown. When the sighting suddenly stopped in 1897, no airship was ever recovered, but the Phantom airship wave marked the dawn of a new American myth, the sky as a stage for secrets, machines, and mysteries just beyond human reach. The International Banker and Federal Reserve Conspiracy. As the 20th century began, America's economy was booming. But so were financial panics. The crashes of 1893 and 1907 had wiped out fortunes and fueled public rage against what many called the money trust, a handful of powerful bankers who seemed to control the nation's credit. Out of that chaos came the Federal Reserve System, created in 1913 to stabilize the economy, yet almost from the moment of its birth, the Fed became the focus of one of America's most enduring conspiracy theories. Critics claim the Federal Reserve was not a public institution at all, but a private cartel of international bankers, dominated by European families like the Rothschilds and British financiers connected to the Bank of England. They pointed to the secretive meeting of Jekyll Island, where Senator Nelson Aldrich and several leading bankers drafted the Federal Reserve Act. To populists and isolationists, this confirmed their fears that global financiers had quietly seized control of America's money supply. Writers such as Eustace Mullins and later political movements in the 20th century revived the story, linking the Fed to wars, depressions, and the rise of globalism. Though investigations have never shown any hidden foreign ownership, the image of international bankers manipulating the US economy persists. It wasn't just about money, it was about sovereignty. In a democracy built on independence, the idea that unseen elites could print and control the nation's currency struck at the heart of American identity. Whether through misunderstanding or mistrust, the Federal Reserve became a symbol of one of America's oldest fears, that true power lies not in ballots, but in banks. The stolen inventions of Nikola Tesla. When Nikola Tesla died alone in a New York hotel room in January 1943, he left behind more than trunks of notes and unfinished experiments. He left behind a mystery. Within hours of his death, government agents from the Office of Alien Property Custodian arrived at his door and seized his papers. Officially, the action was routine. Tesla was a foreign national, and his work might contain information useful or dangerous to national security. But to many, it was the moment a conspiracy began. Tesla had long been a figure of both genius and myth. He dreamed of wireless energy, death rays, and technology that could transmit power freely through the air. He claimed to have developed inventions that could end war or destroy cities from afar. During his lifetime, he clashed with powerful industrialites like Thomas Edison and J.P. Morgan, who saw his vision of free, limitless energy as a threat to profit. When Tesla died penniless, some saw proof that his discoveries had been buried, stolen by governments or corporations that wanted to suppress them. In the decades that followed, stories grew. Some claimed the US military used his ideas to create the Philadelphia experiment, making ships invisible. Others said his death ray research inspired Cold War weapons projects. Conspiracy theorists insisted the government still hides Tesla's most advanced work: zero-point energy, anti-gravity propulsion, and wireless global power systems. In reality, much of Tesla's research was incomplete, theoretical, or simply misunderstood. Yet the secrecy surrounding his papers, some of which were indeed classified, gave the myth its fuel. To the public, Tesla became a tragic symbol, the visionary inventor silenced by the forces of greed and control. The truth may be more mundane, but the story endures because it captures something essential about the modern age: the fear that every breakthrough is shadowed by someone powerful enough to bury it. The disappearance of the Anasazi. High on the red cliffs and canyon walls of the American Southwest lies the ruins of a vanished civilization, the Anasazi, or Ancient Ones. For centuries, they built vast cities of stone, places like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon, complete with astronomical observatories, complex road systems, and ritual kivas carved into the earth. Then, sometime around the late 13th century, they were gone. Entire settlements abandoned, fires burned out, pots left unbroken. Archaeologists today call them the ancestral Puebloans, and most agree that their disappearance was not a mystery at all, but a tragedy of drought, resource exhaustion, and social upheaval. Yet, beginning in the late 19th century, a wave of speculation turned their story into one of America's most enduring ancient conspiracies. Early explorers, mystics, and even spiritualist writers proposed that the Anasazi hadn't vanished. They had ascended, vanished underground, or been taken by star beings. In the early 20th century, occult societies claimed that the Anasazi were descendants of Atlantis, the lost high civilization of prehistory. Others suggested that their precision stonework and celestial alignments proved contact with extraterrestrial visitors thousands of years ago. The US government's later restrictions on excavation and photography at sacred Puebloan sites only deepened public suspicion. To some, it seemed evidence that authorities were hiding the truth about who or what the Anasazi really were. In reality, descendants of the ancestral Puebloans still live today, the Hopi, Zuni, and Pueblo people who carry forward their traditions, ceremonies, and architecture. The disappearance, as archaeologists understand it, was migration, not extinction. Yet the myth persists because it speaks to something deeper: America's fascination with lost worlds and forbidden paths. The ruins in the desert are not just remnants of an ancient culture. They are mirrors of our need to believe that history hides secrets waiting to be uncovered beneath the dust. The Philadelphia Experiment. In the autumn of 1943, the US Navy was at the height of World War II, building new technologies to outwit German submarines and protect Allied ships. But years later, a strange story began to circulate. That one of those secret experiments had gone horribly wrong. The legend claimed that a destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, had been rendered invisible, teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk, Virginia, and back again. They called it the Philadelphia Experiment. According to the tale, the Navy had been testing a new form of electromagnetic cloaking based on the theories of Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein. Witnesses supposedly saw the Eldridge enveloped in a greenish haze, then vanish entirely from the dockyard, reappearing moments later hundreds of miles away. When it returned, the story went, sailors were fused into the metal of the ship, driven insane, or disintegrated by the forces they had unleashed. The first public mention appeared in 1955, when a man named Carl M. Allen, or Carlos Allende, sent letters to a UFO researcher describing the event. His account was vivid but inconsistent, and no Navy records ever supported it. Declassified documents later showed that the Eldridge was never in Philadelphia at the time of the alleged experiment. Naval scientists confirmed that electromagnetic fields could not make a ship vanish. At most, they could distort radar. Yet the story refused to die. It grew through pulp magazines, late-night radio, and the rising fascination with government secrecy during the Cold War. For many, it symbolized everything the military might be hiding: invisible weapons, teleportation, and experiments that tampered with the limits of nature. Across 4 centuries of American history, from colonial pulpits to Cold War laboratories, one thread runs unbroken: the human hunger for hidden meaning. Every generation has looked into the shadows of power and asked the same question: who is really in control? And so, from the mounds of the Midwest to the archives of Washington, from the myth of ancient giants to the whispers of modern power, one truth endures: America's greatest secret has always been its imagination.